Hello, my name is Ethan Waller. I am chair of the RPA and professional rugby player for Northampton Saints. And I'm joined today with Rob from LooseHeadz as we do a pretty unique podcast between the RPA and LooseHeadz to celebrate our recent partnership, but also to highlight the importance of mental health, not just in sport, but day to day. So, Rob, how are you, mate? How's things?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to getting stuck into this podcast and having a bit of a yarn. But no, thank you for having me on. Looking forward to it. I'm well. I'm good. As we're recording this, I'm going to Berlin for a few days tomorrow. So looking forward to switching off for a few days. But all good. Very busy. Lots going on. In the lead up to sort of Mental Health Awareness Week, but I'm good. I'm good, in a good place. How are you? How are you out of 10? Which is something that we say.
Yeah, I mean, out of 10, mate. I mean, I've had a pretty tough day of training, but I'm at a pretty still, mentally at a solid 8, physically at about a 1. But that's just part and parcel, isn't it? That's the game. That's the game we love. But mate, I want to really dive straight into LooseHeadz itself, because I've seen it grow from sort of its start from a distance, and then obviously you and I did some photo shoot stuff at Worcester last year and got to know each other a little bit better. And I've always been a massive fan of what you guys stand for. But for listeners who might not necessarily know the whole story and know fully what LooseHeadz is about, can you just give us the intro, give us the story from you guys so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. So LooseHeadz, I'll take you back right to the start. So about nearly 6 years ago now, LooseHeadz started as a conversation at the end of a rugby club bar. So we all know that all good stories start in the bar, and this one does as well. But it was 3 people. So myself, my old man, and good friend Dave, sort of talking about our rugby stories, our rugby journeys, whilst watching the Lions tour of New Zealand in 2017. But more importantly, it was about the people that we'd met along the way. And we'd all had mates that had what we described back then as a bit of a life wobble. We felt as mates that we couldn't really do anything positive for them, other than, I guess we've all done it, the typical bloke thing. Of saying, you'll be all right, mate, or do you fancy another pint? And that, I guess, is just not good enough. That impotence drove us to form what is now called LooseHeadz. We wanted to be good Samaritans and not cross on the other side of the road. So I guess 2 things we realised when we first started this. One of those is that because we aren't the experts, we can't really get into the cure space. So what we do is we work within what we call the LooseHeadz Square, which is prevent, promote, educate, signpost. They're sort of our 4 key pillars. That's what we live and breathe. And the other thing that we realised quite quickly is that nobody wants to talk about mental health. It's just the world that we live in. So what we try and do at LooseHeadz is use, rugby as that vehicle to sort of start those conversations and normalize the conversation. We all know, you'll know this more than most, but the people listening to this podcast will also know that rugby is that sport where it has the togetherness, the camaraderie, the clubhouse feel. That's what we like to call it. Where, you walk into any clubhouse in the world, you've instantly got a load of new mates. So it's using that power of community, that power of sport, and that power of rugby to just normalise the conversation and start those conversations and ultimately tackle the stigma. And bring it on a little bit further. We always sort of knew our mission, but we didn't really put it out there until March 2020. That's, of course, when the whole world went into lockdown. But it was actually perfect timing, because there's a lot of people that took a step away from their normal everyday routine, and mental health sort of became a bit more of a conversation. But that mission is quite a bonkers mission, but we're not afraid to say it. It's something that should be quite a simple mission as well, and that's to place a mental health lead at every single rugby club in the world. Bonkers mission, but we're currently working with about 800 rugby clubs around the world. So 85% of those are UK based, and then sort of dotted around in the rugby loving English speaking nations, but also further afield. And it's nice to see the reach. We've even got, some clubs signed up now that are in countries where I didn't even know rugby existed. So that's what we're doing. That's a little bit about us, a bit of an intro.
I think it's huge, mate. And clearly your reach has grown and grown. I know that I'm particularly good mates with Will Hooley, who's obviously now over in the USA. And I know he's a big ambassador for you guys. And I see a lot of the work he does. He's been extremely open about his mental health struggle with the World Cup and USA Rugby and just generally at times throughout his career, which I think is massive. And not only is it necessarily raising the awareness of it, obviously, like you say, you work in that square of raising the awareness, but how important is it for you to have these ambassadors in these big name roles who are international rugby players or playing top tier in the Prem, to sort of we'll come on to your hashtag a little bit later, but to break down those walls and make sure that everyone sees, these guys who some people regard as, superhuman, also get mental health issues and aren't necessarily always at 100% all the time. How important is it to have these ambassadors? Yeah, no, it's crucial. And I don't think we would be where we are without the support of ambassadors and the rugby family. Even, you mentioned it before about coming along and wearing the post with pride and getting involved in a photo shoot, but also just opening up and normalising the conversation. I think we talk about it quite a lot, but just wearing, I was talking about it just before, but, even just wearing those posts just starts a conversation. So yeah, ambassadors, we've got around about 40 ambassadors now that are sort of the players at the top of the game that give us that reach, that exposure. But also I think, our biggest focus at LooseHeadz is the grassroots game. And, if you think about the second team prop at your local rugby club who might, be the life and soul of the party on a Saturday, but actually goes home on a Sunday and has their own demons, faces their own demons and doesn't really talk about it. How can we, get that person to sort of open up and start that conversation? And it's using the likes of Will Hooley and we've got male, female ambassadors across the game that sort of normalise that conversation for us. And if you see, these big macho people coming out and talking about it, then hopefully that'll just, start that conversation and allow those grassroots players to come out a bit more. So yeah, we're grateful. We're very thankful to all of the ambassadors that have and everybody that has got involved in any way to sort of champion the cause. We've also got the rugby advisory panel and the mental health panel that we work with as well. So the rugby advisory panel made up of people that I would call rugby royalty. They probably don't want to be called that themselves, but people like Maggie Alfonsi, Nolly Waterman, Craig Doyle, Ugo Monye that have been instrumental in sort of opening doors for us in the rugby world. And then the mental health panel, I mentioned it before, that we aren't the experts, the three of us. So we've had to partner with people who are. So these are a team of people, psychologists, psychiatrists, proper doctors that sort of check and vet everything that we do. So everything that we promote is the right stuff. And that's really important. So to get that help, support and guidance from a team of 14, we should probably get it to 15. So it represents a rugby team, but it's crucial. It's instrumental. So yeah, really important to have these people by our side that sort of in ambassadorial roles that help us along that journey. How do you think that you say there that you probably launched in 2020 when things were really starting to decline for everyone in the world? Without trying to belittle people in that scenario, do you think that period actually was helpful in getting you guys established and to where you are now? Because I think with everyone going through a similar struggle, it sort of brings everyone onto the same page and it also helps bring that mental health thing to light. I think before that, there wasn't a huge amount of conversation and obviously there was a little bit more during the COVID side of things, but I suppose that also may have opened a door that wasn't previously there to say, right, this is a chance to have a conversation because everyone's feeling this way. Let's open these doors, let's have these conversations. No, I said it before. I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think lockdown, whilst it was horrible, and there was a lot of people that went through, a lot of dark times, and those people who were sort of locked down on their own as well. Hats off to them. I don't know how they did it, but I think in a LooseHeadz perspective, I think 100%. I think lockdown was probably in a weird old way the best thing that could have happened to us, because I think there's a lot of people that took a step away from everyday life, but mental health was sort of put on the map. And I think even in the news, we see it a lot more. There's a lot of, there's a lot more conversation. There's a lot more awareness around mental health. I think what we're working on now is that next step.
So people are now aware of it, but actually let's look at how we spot signs in ourselves. Let's look at how we spot signs in others. Let's keep the conversation going and normalize it. And coming back to the square again, it's the education part. I think there's a lot of education that still needs to be done. There's a big part around children as well. So starting that conversation as young as we can, so that we can educate these people. So in terms of education, I think it's all about letting people know that everybody has mental health. I think that's a big thing, a big misunderstanding, I guess, across our society. I guess that I was even speaking to a friend of mine not too long ago, and they said, I don't have mental health, and I just stopped them. Everybody has mental health. It might be good, it might be bad, but we're on this journey, and I guess what we try and do at LooseHeadz as well is change the dialogue a little bit as well to talk about mental fitness. So we all know that mental health, mental fitness, mental well-being, mental wellness, they all mean the same thing. But actually, there's such a stigma attached to that term, mental health. How can we, normalize the conversation a bit and put a positive spin on it? And that's what we talk about when we talk about mental fitness. We liken it to physical fitness. Everybody has physical fitness. Might be good, might be bad, but we all know in a way now what we need to do to sort of work on our physical fitness, and we need to get mental fitness on that same level where we're talking about it. And we all know what we need to do to work on our own mental fitness, and then spot signs when we're taking a dip. And it's just coming back to that, education piece.
I mean, that sort of nicely brings me on to my next point of sort of the importance of being able to almost check in with yourself and your mental health day to day. And as you say, your mental fitness. That education piece is obviously massive. And it's something that you guys are tackling. There's obviously loads of resources on your website. It's a huge part of what you're doing. But just how do you check in with yourself on a daily basis? How would you get others to do the same thing?
Yeah, we talk a lot about the 5 ways to well-being at LooseHeadz. So I'll take you through that, and hopefully that might paint a bigger picture. But 5 ways to well-being is essentially, it's something that's recommended by the NHS as well. But first one is connect. So it's good to get on a podcast and have a chat, but pick up the phone or text someone. Connecting with someone, it's so important for our mental health. Second one is be active. Does not mean that you need to go and pump a load of iron in the gym. It just means get outdoors and go for a walk. See nature. That's another big part of it. The third one is sort of take notice. So if you're in the room, be in the room, sort of stuff. Taking notice is really important. Also, when you're out in nature, take notice of the things around you. That is really good for your mental health. The fourth one is keep learning. Do different things. Keep learning. Listen to podcasts, read a book, learn a new dish. I know you could probably teach me a few things about that for sure. But and then the fifth thing is give. So give without the expectation of receiving something back. So they're the sort of 5 ways to well-being that it doesn't mean you have to do all 5 every day. I try and sort of do as much as I can throughout the week. And a big one for me is getting out of the house. I think, I work from home quite a lot of the time. I'm on the road quite a bit, but work from home quite a lot, and just getting out and about and, walking around the harbour in Bristol, which is where I live, just seeing nature and getting out and exploring and listening to a podcast. I think they're the 2 big things that I do, and listening to music as well. That's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that, because I've not really been that open. But like I say, when you came to Worcester, I had a conversation with one of your guys about. I went through a pretty bleak time during my last year in Worcester. I'd just become a dad, which was, a huge shift to my daily routine. I'd fallen out of favour at Worcester in terms of my position in the team. I had a business that was taking up a huge amount of my time and was still finding its feet. That was massively difficult. And I found myself not being myself at all. My partner, God bless her, who was putting up with me whilst raising an infant as well, sort of highlighted it to me. And she said that you're not yourself. You're very snappy. You're very cut off. You're very distant. And that was a wake up call for me. And I'm fortunate that I had someone in my life to sort of highlight those things. But it still took me a huge amount of time to get out of that. And it's funny the things you were saying there, because I didn't necessarily educate myself on it either, but I found the things that worked the best for me, like getting out into nature was massive. I've got a big dopey German Shepherd who fortunately needs a good lot of walking daily. And getting out with him, putting music on, I'm a huge music fan, and I just would put that on, go and walk with him for an hour or so up a canal or round a golf course next to my house, and sort of just spend time just being with him. No phone other than for the music, wasn't looking at any social media or anything. And that was sort of the only stuff that really brought me back down, until I then started educating myself. I started journaling, I started doing a bit of meditation, I started doing breathing stuff. And that eventually, I'm fortunate that I found my way back into sort of being me. But I mean, it baffles me, because I think there must be so many people in the world that go through these dark times, and some people might be genuinely oblivious to the fact that they're in it. I honestly wouldn't have known had my partner not said something to me. Do you think that's a common thing as well? Not just necessarily the conversation, but do you think as part of that education piece that some people might just genuinely not know that they're in this position?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, it completely. We talk about, looking after ourselves before we look after others. And there are people, in that space, but it's all about checking in every now and again. And I said it right at the start of this call, but one of the partners that we work with, an organisation called Talk Club, and one of their things is, how are you out of 10? And I think that's a really nice tool to just introduce quite slowly into, whether it's a rugby setting at your rugby club or if it's at work in a business setting. It doesn't really matter. But, that how are you out of 10 is a really nice way to just give someone that question so that you can gauge how they're feeling. You're not allowed a 7 either. That's the other big thing, because a 7 is go away. You're 6.9 or a 7.1. But it basically allows you to gauge how that person is feeling, but it also gives that person an opportunity to properly think about how they are feeling. So I think that's quite a nice tool that we've sort of started introducing at rugby clubs, actually, and we've sort of seen a lot of success with it. I think what we've done is we started with a how are you out of 10 check-in at the start, then we've done the rugby session, and then we've introduced the checkout number as well. And usually that checkout number is a higher number than the check-in number, which shows that getting out and having a run around is also good for you. But 100%. I think that there is also that analogy, isn't there, around the oxygen mask on a plane, for example. We're always asked to look after ourselves and give ourselves oxygen before we help others. And I think that's a really nice thing as well. So we do need to focus on ourselves a lot as well. And that's very important. But sometimes it is difficult to spot those signs. So it's all about checking in on yourself, but also checking in on your teammates and those people around you as well.
No, I think that's massive. And it all comes back down to that education piece, as you say, that awareness of it all. And like I say, we'll come onto the hashtag a bit later, but I feel like we've probably covered everything the hashtag means at this point anyway, but we'll revisit. Why won't we? Recently, obviously, the RPA and LooseHeadz have partnered ahead of Mental Health Awareness Week. Obviously, our partnership is massive. It's an honour for us to be partnered with you, but from your point of view, how exciting is this?
It's massive. It's massive. We've been chatting to James Bailey now for a few months, and there's so much synergy, so much crossover between the work that LooseHeadz does and the RPA does. And I think it's quite nice because we're working in similar sort of swims, but we've got the same sort of goal, but we're not working in the same space. So partnership completely makes sense. So obviously the RPA works with the players at the very top of the game. I think where we see our big focus is within that grassroots space, like I was talking before. So whilst we work with the likes of Premiership Rugby and Premiership Rugby players and clubs, we work with Major League Rugby, like you mentioned with Will Hooley before, but we see our big focus as being the grassroots game. And that's what we know, that's what we love, that's what we've played, so it's what we get. But that sort of crossover and synergy between what you mentioned it before, these people, these players, they might be seen as superhuman, but actually they're just human, and they've got the same stuff going on in their lives as the players in the grassroots game. So there's a lot of crossover there and a lot of synergy, but we're dead excited to partner up and work on a few things at the end of this season, but also into next season as well. So a couple of the things that we're working on, we'll be going into clubs to sort of promote the LooseHeadz message to players, but also we're going to be working on a bit of a social media series. So something that James and I have spoken about is that what we want to do is we want to give players the right tools, the right resources to start conversations, but start them in comfortable environments. So we've sort of labeled 4 key areas that are sort of big in a rugby player's life. And that's right from the top level all the way down to grassroots. And they are, you mentioned it before, actually, quite interestingly, that you've got a dog. Dog walks is one of them. So, starting a conversation on a dog walk. The other one is coffee clubs. A lot of clubs will do this. I don't know if you've got one at Saints, but, probably a lot of the boys love a bit of coffee. And actually, we've just launched a coffee at LooseHeadz in collaboration with Rugby Coffee. So that's a good opportunity to promote that. But, starting a coffee and conversation is a big part. The other one is gaming, which is an interesting one. I actually spoke with Lewis Liner on a LooseHeadz and an RPA podcast not too long ago. And he was saying that, he has some of his biggest conversations with mates whilst, just on the headset and gaming. So another one, and the other one is in the gym. It's a nice opportunity just to start a conversation. Even it doesn't need to be. I think the big thing about LooseHeadz as well is that we've never really been about ramming this whole message about mental health down people's throats. It's all about bite-sized chunks, and the sort of if we can give people little bits of information and then take 1 or 2 things away just to improve their life step by step, little by little, then that's going to be a good thing. But yeah, really, in answer to your question, really, really excited to partner up with the RPA, and there's so much crossover. So there's a lot that we can do together that will be meaningful and impactful.
Yeah, I think from our perspective as well, it's massively exciting. I mean, you've covered the majority of it there, but I think it's interesting starting those clubs to start the conversation is huge. So I think when it's a conversation purely about mental health, let's sit down and chat about your mental health, mental fitness. It can be a bit daunting, and it can almost feel like an intervention, and it feels like there's something wrong, as opposed to when there's another focus as well. I think similar to Lewis, I've had some of my deepest conversations during gaming as well, which is ironic because you're probably at your most stressed at that point. But it's massive, and I think there's players in so many different stages of their career throughout the RPA, and you've got some members who are just coming into the system. You've got some who may be flying high. You've got others who might be in the middle of their career but are now struggling to get another contract. They might have to come out of it. People who have been injured, and I think the more tools that can be shared amongst that playing group, and these guys who are also coaching at grassroots clubs or still go back to their grassroots clubs, the wider that message can be spread and these tools can go, the better it gets passed down, and the better everyone's mental health and mental fitness will be when it comes to that inevitable time that they're going to finish. Because I think there's an alarming statistic about how many ex-professionals after they retire, I think, are diagnosed with depression. I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head.
66%, so 2/3 of rugby players. Yeah, and I think that comes back down to what the RPA are doing a lot of great work in, and we would love to join on that. And I think it goes from all the way from professional down into grassroots as well. But it's that whole thing around life after rugby. And it's the planning and preparation behind the life after rugby. So it doesn't, we like to term it as plan A. Whatever's after rugby needs to be part of plan A. It can't be plan B. It needs to be part of plan A. And that conversation needs to start when you're 19, 20, 21, not when you're 28, 29, 30. So yeah, there's lots of great crossover there.
Yeah, I agree. Although it is quite difficult, and maybe we should have some of the player development stuff conversations during gaming as well, because I think you'd probably get a lot more buy-in out of sort of the 19, 20-year-old lads than you would in in an auditorium in front of a meeting. Hey, that's one to think about. Actually, I might keep that one in the back pocket. Who knows? Rob, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to chat, and I'm hugely excited about this partnership between the RPA and LooseHeadz going forward. I know it's going to be something that'll be very special and ultimately beneficial for not necessarily just the two parties involved, but our entire membership group. And hopefully that, again, like we say, can drip on down to the grassroots game as much as we can help as professionals. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. And like you say, really excited to kickstart this partnership. And I'll see you soon. See you soon for a sandwich in Northampton.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe we'll see. But that draws us to an end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, or if you yourself want to better your mental health or mental fitness, or maybe just have a look at the Looseheadz cause, find them on social media and on their website. There are some fantastic resources there that will be of use to anybody. Otherwise, thanks again for listening. Cheers.